Fight Mike here. Today we're going to be breaking down the UFC 317 card in Vegas this weekend, headlined by Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. I'll start off with the early prelim opener. We've got Niko Price versus Jacoby Smith. I'll be picking Jacoby Smith by first round brutal TKO over Niko Price. I swear I say this about every single one of these prospects fights. I just think that they match them up terribly. I said this about the Chris Moutinho versus Malcolm Wellmaker fight, the Cody Brundage versus Mansour Abdulmalik fight, and this is sort of a very similar matchup because we know that Niko Price hasn't got the best chin. He got smoked by Robbie Lawler very quickly, and he's just not the most skilled fighter, and he's quite a slow guy at this point in his career. And his only win in the last 4 years is Alex Morono. And the thing is that Jacoby Smith is literally one of the best prospects in the UFC. He's got really fast hands, really fast feet with his footwork. He's really clean with his shots, and he puts a lot into them as well. He's got a really high-level collegiate wrestling pedigree, and he can defend takedowns really well, shoot takedowns really well. And I just don't see the advantages that Niko Price has in this one. He's going to come out very slow. He's going to try to wear out Jacoby Smith. But I think that the speed of Jacoby is just going to smoke him in that first round. Going into the fight as well, Niko's got so many losses coming up against an undefeated fighter, so he's going to be a lot more timid against Jacoby Smith. And Jacoby just doesn't seem like the type of guy that you can sort of like run away from and like play at range and wear him out over time. I think you have to take him out yourself, much like Ilia Topuria. I think you have to beat him in that first round. And Niko Price is not going to be that type of guy. So I'm going to pick Jacoby Smith by getting this easy first round TKO. Moving on to the second fight, we've got Jonata Deniz versus Alvin Hines. Obviously, you can see by the picture down below that there was no photo for Alvin Hines on ESPN. So we have to rock with the Sherdog image. But I'll be picking Jonata Deniz in this one. I think he's obviously a much better striker being from Glory Kickboxing. And the thing is that although Alvin Hines looked pretty good on the regional scene and has some nasty finishes, the opponents that he's fighting are just not on the same level, even as the opponents that Jonata Deniz was fighting in Glory. Like, I just don't think the level of opposition that Jonata's faced in his regional career and kickboxing career, they're much better fighters than the ones that Alvin Hines has been beating recently. In saying that, though, Alvin Hines' opponents, they literally have none of them have got more than 5 fights as well, so Deniz is going to have the experience advantage in this. And Hines is really slow. If you've watched his regional fights, he's got decent leg kicks, decent head kicks. He's finished his last opponent by a head kick, but his takedowns are really slow. He sort of like falls into them. It looks like he's literally got no speed and power in his takedowns. And he has decent defense at range, but when he actually goes in to throw his strikes, he literally just crashes in with no defense at all. And in this fight, he's going to be a lot shorter. His range is going to be a lot smaller than Jonata Deniz. They list him as 6'2", but I think he's probably closer to like maybe 6 foot, maybe 6'1". And I think that Jonata Deniz listed as like 6'4". He's going to be the much taller, rangier guy as well. And he's just going to be a better striker. He's a lot more clean and sharp than Hines. And even though he did lose, this is Jonata Deniz, even though he did lose last time out to Marcin Tybura, it was on the ground to a lot of ground and pound, and it was a bit of a weird stoppage because they didn't stop it at the end of the round. They stopped it at the beginning of the next because apparently his legs were wobbly. But even then, I've watched the replay on that twice, and I don't think he looked that bad. Hines does shoot takedowns, but I haven't seen the same like level of control and ground and pound that a Tybura has shown, so I don't think he's going to be able to finish Jonata on the ground. I reckon I'm going to pick Jonata by like a second round KO. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Cedric Dumas versus Jackson McVeigh. Can I just say, how is Cedric allowed to fight at the moment? Like, if you've been following up on the news with him, so in April this year, he fought against Mikhail Oleksiejczuk and got brutally finished in the first round, which was literally 2 months ago, keep in mind. And then 2 weeks later, he gets booked on 5 charges by the police, including like a felony home invasion, robbery, battery, possession of a weapon, possession of a controlled substance, misdemeanor drug equipment or something like that. So it's like, legally, how are you fighting right now? And I'm pretty sure he's fresh out of prison as well, so he's not been training for this fight. And how are you medically cleared? You got TKO'd and finished in April. Like, I really don't understand how he's allowed to fight. And this fight got made literally maybe like 4 or 5 days ago. So he has not been training for this. The thing is about Cedric is that even though he's in the UFC and Jackson McVeigh has fought absolute cans, he is probably the most reactionary fighter I've ever seen in my entire life. If you feint at him, he's leaping across the cage 3 meters away. He's putting his hands in his face. If you've seen him fight, you know that this is his only defense. It's putting his hands in his face and literally moving towards you. So I don't see him doing very well in this matchup, even though Jackson McVeigh is not a good opponent. And I will pick against Jackson McVeigh in his next fight. But you can't be this reactionary and be in the UFC. If you attack him, he will literally just lean forward with his head in his hands. And even though I haven't seen that much of Jackson McVeigh and the people he fought are terrible cans, and there's literally no one with a good record that he's ever fought. And even then, his last fight, I couldn't find footage anywhere of. But I have seen he's got pretty slick submissions. He's got good grappling. His kicks look pretty sharp. Haven't seen much of his boxing, but Cedric doesn't have boxing to scream about, so I don't really worry about him there. And just seeing how terrible and jittery Cedric looked in his last fight, I have to pick against him. I think he'll get hit once, he'll start jittering and flinging himself around the octagon, and McVeigh will be able to feint in him a couple more times, draw out a few more reactions. And when Cedric does this terrible ducking down motion, I think that Jackson McVeigh will move in towards him. We've seen Jackson McVeigh, he's really good with those front chokes, so I think he'll get a standing guillotine and jump it down to a normal guillotine, or he'll get a standing ninja choke and shuck him down to the floor and get a round 1 sub. Just because of seeing Cedric's last few fights, I literally will never pick him again. He's just not the level of opponent I can see anyone in the UFC losing to, because he literally, I'm not kidding, his only defense is putting his head in his hands and lifting his neck forward for you to sub him. It's surprising that that's not how he's been finished ever, but this will be how he gets finished in round 1 in this fight against Jackson McVeigh. Moving on, we've got Terrence McKinney versus Vyacheslav Borshev. This is the battle of the glass cannons. You know that one of these guys has a very big chance of getting slept. I really want to pick Terrence McKinney for this one, but I'm going to have to go with Vyacheslav Borshev. I can't trust McKinney to win these fights. He beat Damir Hadzovic in his last time out with a good, nasty KO in the first round. But the thing is that he either wins a first-round finish or gets beaten by a first-round finish. And the thing is that I just rate some of Borshev's opponents more. He lost last time out to Tom Nolan. It was sort of close. He got beaten by Chase Hooper, and he had a draw with Nazim Sadikov, who we've seen is a very slick striker. And the thing is, Borshev does have really nice boxing. He can shock you with his hand speed sometimes. And funnily enough, even though these guys both have a glass chin, I think they both know that, and they're both going to bring it to a decision somehow. I think McKinney's probably seen that Borshev's been out-grappled a couple of times throughout his UFC career, and will try to sub him instantly like McKinney was able to do to Fares Ziam, who I would rate as a better grappler. But I think that Borshev would have worked on his takedown defense. He'll end up surviving the first round, where I think McKinney's going to blast double him and instantly into the fight. And then the next 2 rounds, they'll scrap it out together, probably both hurting each other multiple times. But then Borshev coming out on top just due to being a bit more... He's got a bit more in his gas tank. I think he's got a bit more grit than Terrence McKinney. And I think he'll be able to inch those last 2 rounds, getting a 29-28 decision. Moving on, we've got Vivian Araújo versus Tracy Cortez. I'm going to be taking Araújo in this one. I think they're both very similar in terms of their skill levels and their techniques. And they're both pretty well-rounded. They've got suspect takedown defense. They both like to shoot takedowns themselves, though, and they've got a similar striking level. I just think the major difference in this one will be the size advantage that Araújo has, and she seems the more grittier fighter. Tracy hasn't shown a bad chin and hasn't really quit in any of her fights, but once she was losing against Rose, she seemed to be lost in that fight and didn't really make any adjustments towards the end of the fight. I think Araújo will take this one by a decision, maybe losing the first round due to getting out pitter-patted on the feet by Tracy Cortez. And then the second and third round, she'll be able to take it back and win those last 2 rounds, maybe using her grappling and winning a 29-28 decision. Moving on, we've got Hyder Emil versus Jose Delgado. This is a really close fight. This is very, very close. But I'm going to have to pick Jose Delgado as well in this one. I think Hyder Emil's really good. I thought he lost against William Gomez, though. And I would honestly rate Jose Delgado higher than William Gomez. Gomez is very elusive. He's difficult to deal with. But I just think Delgado is even more difficult. He switches stances a lot. This is Delgado. And he constantly feints. He has really good head movement, heavy hands. He's got good finishing ability as well. Once he hurts you, he tries to finish every time. And he's got very varied attacks with his punches, his kicks, his body work, his knees, his leg kicks. He goes into the clinch as well. And it just makes Delgado a very difficult opponent to read. I don't think that Hyder Emil is going to be trying to read him at any point in this fight. He seems to be like a cinder block brained type guy that runs forward, takes shots, and tries to deliver the harder shots. But I think in this fight he'll have less advantages that he had over William Gomez. I think Hyder Emil's got pretty good grappling. He's more gritty than William Gomez, and he's sort of just like the whole package. Whilst Hyder Emil, he is a bit of a grinder. He's strong. He likes to blast out everything at full pelt. He never throws tapping shots at you. And he sort of always comes forward as like an attacking juggernaut. And he abandons his defense. He comes forward swinging. He definitely has the chance to put out Jose Delgado. But I just think that he gets tagged way too much against worse strikers than Jose Delgado. And I think Delgado is just going to survive the early onslaught by Hyder Emil, maybe win the second round with it being like a closer round, but he's tagging Hyder Emil a lot more. You see maybe Hyder Emil get dropped to a knee, and then round 3, I think he's just going to look the much cleaner striker. I don't think he's going to blow his load over the first 2 rounds, and I think he's going to finish Hyder Emil in this 3rd round. Even though Hyder's got like a generational looking chin, I still think Delgado hits people too clean, and Hyder gets hit too clean as well. So I think he's just going to abandon his defense and get TKO'd in the 3rd round. Moving on to the next fight, we've got Jack Hermansson versus Gregory Rodriguez. I'll be taking Gregory Rodriguez in this matchup. I think this is a really fun fight. I reckon that this has the chance of being fight of the night. I think whenever Hermansson's fighting, I have the thought of picking him every time, but certain matchups are way too difficult for Hermansson, and I think that this is one of them. If this fight was over 5 rounds, I'd be picking Hermansson every day of the week, but I think over 3, Gregory will be able to keep his gas tank and work Jack Hermansson over the early rounds. Gregory's a really fast starter. In those first 2 rounds, he's really explosive and powerful, and he's really switched on in those first 2 rounds, whereas Jack Hermansson's sort of the same fighter across 5. He doesn't build into the fights, but he doesn't start really fast. He's sort of like he'll beat you if you can't keep the same tempo Jack Hermansson will. And I think that this is going to look really similar to that Joe Pyfer fight, where Joe Pyfer looked really good in those first 2 rounds, but then he just wasn't able to keep up that same aggression and speed throughout the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. But you may be yelling at your computer saying Hermansson beat Pyfer, but he did lose those first 2 rounds. And in this case, being a 3-round fight, I think Rodriguez will look similar to Pyfer in those first 2 rounds. He'll be able to win, maybe drop Hermansson, once or twice, outstrike him, look like the more powerful guy, maybe shuck off a takedown or 2. And then maybe in the 3rd round, he'll start to get taken down and worked. But I don't think that he's going to lose it in that I don't think he's going to lose either of those first 2 rounds. And I think Gregory just has more of a deep tool bag than Joe Pyfer. We've seen last time out when Pyfer fought Gastelum, he just didn't seem to have that deep tool bag, whereas we know Gregory Rodriguez does have that. He's got really elite grappling as well. This is Rodriguez, and Hermansson's game plan will likely be to wear out him in the grappling, and I just don't think that'll work out for him. And for Hermansson to win, I think he has to get a takedown in that early round, and I think the jiu-jitsu experience will be able to at least mitigate anything that happens on the ground, or will be able to keep him away from the ground for Gregory. And I think that Jack's timing on his takedowns and his timing on his punches is going to be really poor, as he's been out for 18 months since fraud checking Joe Pyfer last year. So I just don't think he's going to be feeling comfortable in the cage. And I could just see him being really jittery on the feet for that first round. I could definitely see Rodriguez even KOing him in that first, but I think it'll be a 29-28 decision or a first round KO for Rodriguez. I'm pretty torn on what to pick for this. Moving on to the opener of the main card, we have Peyton Talbot versus Felipe Lima. Man, this is a really close fight. This is a lot closer than people are saying. I think people think that just because Talbot lost to Raoni Barcelos that he will never win another fight in his life. And I think Felipe Lima is seen as like a new Charles Oliveira, which could definitely be true, but we haven't really seen that yet. I think stylistically, Raoni is a much more difficult style to beat for Peyton Talbot, just because Peyton Talbot stands upright and he's a really slick striker. He's really quick. But his upright stance and his lack of takedown defense makes him susceptible for someone who's really good wrestler, a grinder, and someone with good defense. Whereas Felipe is a good grappler, but he's not a wrestler per se. He's more on the jiu-jitsu side. He'll like to get and hold the back position. He'll go for submissions. He's got decent takedowns, but it's not the same as Raoni Barcelos. Raoni's known for having really good takedowns. And ultimately, what I see this fight coming down to is if Talbot's able to make those significant improvements in takedown defense and whether his get-ups from the ground are looking really good. If I was Lima, I'd be making sure I've got a really wrestling-heavy game plan to see if Talbot hasn't fixed that hole. But I think that Talbot on the feet will have a much bigger advantage. He's a lot more calm and he's a slick striker with good counters. And when Felipe Lima's on the feet, his defense is not amazing. Sometimes he's rushing forward. He can be a bit crazy, throwing naked flying knees. He'll throw like a spinning wheel kick. He'll sometimes throw an overhand that's naked. And he leaves himself open when coming in. At range, his guard is really high and his defense looks really good at range. He's got good head movement at range. But when closing the distance, he's looked a little bit iffy on the feet, especially against Muhammad Naimov. But I'll give him credit, he looked a lot more improved in the Miles Johns fight that he had last time out. And he's been working off his jab a lot more. So, honestly, I don't see Felipe Lima getting caught by any punches from Peyton Talbot, just because I think he might get caught and hurt, but I don't think he's going to get finished, just because I think he's going to work really nicely off his jab too. He'll stay like composed in the pocket. He'll know that that's his Peyton Talbot's best chance. And I don't think he's going to get caught rushing in with like a hook. Oh no. Sorry, my water bottle fell right in front of my screen, but moving back to this. Sorry, but I think that ultimately Felipe Lima is not going to come forward like Cameron Simon. I don't think he's going to get caught with a left hook or caught with a knee as he's coming in, because he doesn't move like that. So I think the jab will be able to win him this fight, because it did look really good in that Miles Johns fight. And I think on the feet, Talbot will look quite a bit better, but in the clinch, on the ground, I think it's just going to be the versatility of Felipe Lima that will win him the fight. I think he'll have a bunch of takedown attempts. He'll shoot in for the clinch. He'll go for the knees to the thigh. Like, he'll just keep making Peyton Talbot work for this fight. He'll make him guess the entire time. He'll feint the takedown attempts after he's got him biting on those. And then he'll flick his jab out until he'll have his next takedown attempt. And I think he'll just be the more active, more busy fighter. He'll get some leg kicks off on Peyton Talbot. And I just think that he's going to be able to do more than Peyton. Maybe even Peyton will be able to drop him in the fight. But I think that he'll lose like a close 29-28 decision, where it's just the grappling and just Felipe Lima outworking Peyton Talbot in this fight. I think it'll be like a 29-28 decision. Moving on, we've got Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. I was really close to picking Dariush for this one, but I've gone with Renato. I think that this will be a really close fight. I think that people are overrating Moicano's chances in this one. I think people think he's just going to smoke and KO Dariush just because Dariush has been smoked and KO'd by his last two opponents, but that's not entirely true. Renato is not a striker. A lot of his KOs and TKOs, or if not all of them, have been from damage on the ground. And I don't think he's taking down Dariush. As a wrestler that trains with Moicano, this is Gamrot that I'm talking about. Gamrot could barely get down Dariush in their fight. And Dariush has really good submission offense when you shoot on him. He's got really good wrestling defense. He's great with the sprawl. He won't get taken down that often. And if he gets taken down, he'll win the scrambles. He's constantly moving. So I think I'll go as far as saying that Dariush will win those grappling exchanges. But the problem with this matchup, I don't see it being a grappling fight. I think Moicano will know that that's his hardest point to win, the most difficult path to winning the fight. And if we've seen anything from Renato, that he's got a good fight IQ. So I think he's going to try and speed mog Dariush. And I reckon he'll be somewhat successful in it. I don't think that he's powerful on the feet. I don't think Renato's got that one-shot KO power. But he will be the more active and clean striker. He's a lot faster than Beneil, and he's got better timing from Beneil. And especially since Beneil's not fought since 2023, and he's coming off 2 KO losses, his timing is going to be way worse in that fight. And to be honest, he's barely landed a shot since 2022. So 3 years ago, against Gamrot 3 years ago, was the last time he landed a good shot. So 3 years without a good performance in the octagon is just too much for me to be able to pick him. I think that he's just not going to look very clean on the feet. He's going to look slow. And although I think he's got better wrestling than Moicano, I don't think it's that massive of a difference. I think it would be 60-40 in favor of Dariush. So I don't think he's just going to smoke and smudge Moicano on the ground. And on the feet, the speed and timing disparity will be too much for a ring-rusted Dariush in this fight. I think it'll be a 30-27 decision for Moicano. Maybe one of the judges give it 29-28. Moving on, we've got Brandon Royval versus Joshua Van. I think Brandon Royval will take this fight. If it was Manelcap, I would consider going the other way. I probably would pick Manelcap, but it's not. So I think this is just going to be too early for Joshua Van. And if you look at the only style that has beaten Joshua Van in the UFC, that's been Charles Johnson, which is, he's sort of got a similar style to Brandon Royval, but just a little bit less grappling and a little bit less clean as well. So this is the most difficult style matchup out of anyone in the entire division. Like, you put Pantoja and Joshua Van against each other, and I think Joshua Van's doing better than he will against Brandon Royval in this fight. I think Joshua Van's really good. I really highly rate him. His boxing's really slick. His takedown defense is amazing. And he's really explosive and powerful on the feet. He's becoming more powerful as well, fight to fight. But I just don't see him beating Royval. I think even Moreno was a better matchup for Joshua Van. Moreno at least predominantly fights in the striking realm. Shoots takedowns sometimes, but not as much as Royval. Whereas Royval's constantly using his entire arsenal. He'll always touch you with the jab. He'll always get you with the leg kick. He's got really good finishing ability with his submissions and his crazy techniques like his spinning elbows and all of those sorts of attacks. And Royval has definitely been practicing his scrambling after losing multiple times to Pantoja. And I think last time out looked really good against Tatsuro Taira. And I think he'll know how good Joshua Van is on the feet, so he'll make it a point to overwhelm him and grapple him using his newfound techniques that he's been able to use in his last few fights. And Royval's a smart guy. He knows that Van has really good takedown defense, but against guys who mix it up really well, I think he'll struggle more, and Royval will be able to shoot a bit more freely, just because Joshua Van will have the strikes to think about the whole time. And I think that since Royval has known that he was fighting so long ago against Manelcap, who's sort of a similar style matchup to Joshua Van, Manelcap switches stances more, but I think he's a cleaner, faster, more experienced striker than Joshua Van. Better head movement. I think he's more dangerous. So I think he's been preparing for a style matchup similar to this for the last way longer than Joshua Van. Joshua Van fought a month ago against Bruno Silva. That's not a similar stylistic matchup. And even if he dominated the fight, it was still a fight where it went 3.5 rounds or 3 3/4 of the rounds, and it just didn't. It looks like he didn't take a lot of damage, but he took a little bit of damage. Like, I'm sure he's a bit sore after that. He's probably only recovered from like sore hands, sore elbows, sore knees for the last 2 weeks. So he's had no training for this at all. So I reckon that Royval will look the fresher fighter. I think Van will look good in parts of the fight, but won't make it past Royval's difficult range. And I think that Royval will get a couple of takedowns on him, hold him down for a little bit. Van will be able to get back up, but then he'll be thinking about those takedowns for the rest of the fight. And I think Van will be a lot more hesitant on the feet, whereas Royval will be able to touch him the entire fight. I could see it being another 30-27 decision for Brandon Royval, where they're talking about Joshua Van being a little bit too experienced and maybe needing to work his way back up into title contention. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening, I've got Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Kara-France. This is such a hard fight to predict. I think this is the closest fight on the card, to be honest. If you asked me 2 years ago, I'm predicting Pantoja, no doubt about it, but this is a different case. I think Pantoja's been looking decent in his last fight, but one fight before, everyone was saying he looked trash against Steve Erceg. And Steve Erceg is another one of these Aussie, New Zealand guys, trained with Craig Jones a little bit, knows the specifics, has a really, stays calm on the ground, and that's the same as Kai Kara-France. And the difference between Erceg and Kai Kara-France is that Erceg's a lot longer, so he was able to use the reach on Pantoja, which Kara-France won't be able to do. But the thing is that Pantoja's getting old for flyweight. He's 35 years old. We heard about the 35-year curse literally every fight up until this one, so I think that they assume that this curse has been broken, but I don't think that it's that simple. I think that these guys, especially in the flyweight division, need to be really fast. And I think stylistically, as you get along in your career, when you're getting a little bit slower, a little bit older, the harder fights are the ones with the really explosive guys with fast hands that you have to constantly think about their power. And that's exactly what Kai Kara-France is. He's got so much power in his hands. He's got really good takedown defense, slick boxing. I just don't think he'll finish Pantoja in this one. I think this fight will go to a decision. I also don't think Pantoja is going to finish Kai Kara-France on the ground. I think Kai Kara-France has known that he was getting a title shot since UFC 305, and he knew it would have a really good grappler in it. I think he would assume that Pantoja was going to beat Asakura. So I think he's been sitting out since 305, working his takedown defense, working his back escapes and all of that sort of stuff. And historically, he's had really good defense on the ground already, so let alone giving him another year to prepare for it. I think it's not a good time for Pantoja. I think this is set up for Kai Kara-France to win this, and I don't think Pantoja is going to shoot doubles on Kai Kara-France just because he knows how good Kai Kara's sprawl is. I think he's going to look for the press up against the cage and tripping him, getting to the back, that sort of work there. But I think that Kai Kara-France probably has known that since 12 months ago, and he's probably been working a lot in the clinch. So I think in this fight that Pantoja will be able to get him down once or twice throughout the rounds, maybe hold him down in the back position, playing backpack for a bit. But I think the other 3 rounds will be really close. But I think Kai Kara-France will win most of the striking exchanges. I think he'll beat Pantoja to the punch almost every time. The kicks for Pantoja worry me a bit, as we've all seen Kai Kara-France have a weakness in that midsection. But I think he'll be pretty well prepared for this fight, and I think he'll be able to get a 48-47 decision, maybe a split decision. I have to fence sit on this one. I know it's not good to be a fence sitter, but I really think that this is going to be an iron close fight. And I think that if it was a year ago, Pantoja would have been able to outdo him, maybe push him up against the cage a little bit longer. Maybe it would look a bit more similar to that Moreno fight where it was really iron close. But I think in this one that Kai Kara-France is going to be the slicker fighter out of the two. He'll get more jabs off. He'll get more inside boxing off. And I don't know if he'll rock Pantoja at all, but we'll be seeing Pantoja's head getting snapped back quite a bit in this one. And I think that it'll be a razor-close 48-47 decision for Kai Kara-France. Moving on to the main event, we've got Ilia Topuria versus Charles Oliveira. I'll be picking Charles Oliveira by not picking Charles Oliveira by TKO in this. I'll be picking Topuria by TKO. I'm really hyped for this fight, though. I think it's a stylistic matchup that'll be such a treat to watch. And I think even though Topuria's nickname is El Matador, which means bullfighter in English, he is really the bull. He is not the matador. He's not standing there waiting for you to whiff and smacking you with a beautiful uppercut as you're coming in. He's not that guy. He's actually the bull, but only past that first round. If you watch any first round of Ilia Topuria fights, he always loses it due to low output. He has a similar first round to Petr Yan, where he lands some good leg kicks, he lands some clean jabs to the body, and he'll sort of fight the round for the investment. He'll lose the round to make the reads and just to sort of see what your reactions are. And he'll let go of a couple of combinations, but he won't release more than 2 punches in that first round. And I think that this is where Charles is going to be able to really win that first round. Charles's Ilya style collide in that fact where Charles in round 1 is the most dangerous. He presses the action hard. He throws everything at you. He may even put a bit of damage on Ilya in that first round. I think that those like leg kicks and those knee stomps, those oblique kicks, the Muay Thai plum, maybe some knees to the ribs. I think that Ilya, I don't think he'll show it on his face, but I think he'll have a little bit of damage going into that second round. And then when it comes to the second round, I think Charles will start off much similar to the first, being like sort of an offensive juggernaut and trying to overwhelm Topuria, throwing head kicks, trying to occupy the hands. But I think he'll overthrow something, get caught out of position, and then I don't think he'll get caught from that, but I think the next exchange, Topuria will have his feet a little bit closer to Charles, and Charles, we know he's got not the best depth perception, and I think he'll get not hurt, but I think he'll be really wary of the next few exchanges, and I think Topuria is going to get really close with a couple of flurries, then dig some body shots up against the cage, and then I think the next exchange after digging some body shots is going to go up top with some sort of overhand and KO Oliveira as he's getting up on one knee, trying to like time Topuria with a knee as he's going for an overhand, but he'll just miss. He'll get dropped. I think Topuria will let him back up, and then the next exchange is going to get rocked really bad, and I think the ref is going to call it. I think we're going to all scream early stoppage. I don't think it's a flat line, but yeah, I think it'll be a second round KO for this. But it's really difficult to predict, even though I just laid out like such a set-in-stone method of how Topuria wins this. I think that if Patient Oliveira comes out like he did in his last fight against Michael Chandler, he'll likely survive until the third or fourth round, and then maybe get KO'd or finished. But I just don't... he might... If he fights like that, he has the chance of winning a decision. I don't see it, though. But then I think if he fights like he did, this is Charles, I think if Charles fights like he did against Gaethje and Poirier, I think he has a better chance of winning that fight. And it would only be in that first round, but he could get the finish in that first round with like a knee to the face of Ilya Topuria while they're in the Muay Thai plum, or maybe like an elbow, maybe like a head kick. Like I could see it being a very difficult round for Ilya Topuria to get past, but I just don't see Oliveira finishing Topuria in those first two rounds. I could see him hurting him like Jai Herbert did, but I think overall Topuria is going to be the cleaner striker. He's going to be able to stay safe in those first two rounds, and he'll be able to get the finish. I think, especially if Charles goes full juggernaut in those first two rounds, I think at the end of the second round he'll get finished. And even then, if he goes as like the patient Charles, I think he'll get finished in the third or fourth. I think Ilya's got the perfect style to beat an upright standing Charles Oliveira. And I just don't think anyone's going to be really happy after this fight. We're all going to be crying because Ilya's beaten our top three favorite fighters back to back by KO. And we're all going to hate him, but that's the way that the sport goes. Let me know what you think of my predictions below. Like and subscribe. As always, leave a comment, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.